Bankless Nation, in the earliest days of Bankless, we came up with a meme that we call the DeFi Mullet. Fintech in the front and DeFi in the back. This was a thesis that Ryan and I had about how DeFi would grow from a niche user base of crypto natives whose hobby it is to understand and how to use financial plumbing, who like to pop open the hoods of their financial tools and wire things together themselves, to the rest of the world. Millions upon millions of users and billions upon $1 billion of capital. That gap between DeFi being niche and DeFi being mainstreamed was the DeFi mullet. Fintech in the front, DeFi in the back. DeFi is simply better. It offers better rates. It's more transparent. It's permissionless. It's anti-fragile. It's credibly neutral. And for these reasons, centralized companies would have no problem integrating with credibly neutral DeFi apps to sell the value of DeFi to their users on their platform. That is what's happening today, with Coinbase integrating with Morpho to offer Bitcoin-backed loans to their customers. We've got two guests on the show today, one from each organization, to discuss how this works, what this means, and where it goes next for both Morpho and Coinbase, but also the rest of the crypto industry. One quick note before we get into the conversation. I think Coinbase is really getting a trifecta of a win here. When a Coinbase user gets a Bitcoin-backed loan, their Bitcoin is automatically converted into CBBTC, which is a Coinbase product. That CBBTC is deposited into Base, which is an Ethereum layer 2 incubated and owned by Coinbase. And Morpho is a Coinbase Ventures portfolio company. Coinbase Ventures participated in their last funding round alongside A16Z and Variant. And so really everything kind of about this product wraps up into three big wins for Coinbase vertical. So you got to hand it to them. So let's go ahead and get right into this episode with Paul from Morpho and Will from Coinbase. With over $1.5 billion in TVL, the METH protocol is home to METH, the fourth largest ETH liquid staking token, offering one of the highest APRs among the top 10 LSTs. And now CMETH takes things even further. This restaked version captures multiple yields across Kerak, Eigenlayer, Symbiotic, and many more, making CMETH the most efficient and most composable LRT solution on the market. Metamorphosis Season 1 dropped $7.7 million in Cook rewards to METH holders. Season 2 is currently ongoing, allowing users to earn staking, restaking, and AVS yields, plus rewards in Cook, METH protocol's governance token, and more. Don't miss out on the opportunity to stake, restake, and shape the future of METH protocol with Cook. Participate today at meth.mantle.xyz. Introducing Unichain. Built for DeFi and powered by Uniswap, Unichain is the fast, decentralized layer 2, designed to tackle blockchain speed and cost challenges. With this mainnet now live, you can enjoy transactions that are up to 95% cheaper than the ETH layer 1, all while benefiting from an impressive 1-second block time that will be getting even faster very soon. Unichain is the first layer 2 to launch as a stage 1 rollup on day 1. That means it comes with a fully functional permissionless proof system from the start, increasing transparency and further decentralizing the chain. More than 80 apps are joining the Unichain community, including Coinbase, Circle, Lido, Morpho, and Uniswap. You'll be able to bridge, swap, borrow, and lend, and launch new assets and more from day 1. Built by Uniswap Labs, the team behind the protocol that's processed over 2.75 trillion in all-time volume with zero hacks, Unichain truly enhances DeFi experiences with faster, cheaper, and seamless transactions, even across chains. And soon, the Unichain validation network will allow anyone to run a node and earn by securing the network. Visit uniswap.org and swap on Unichain today. Ondo Finance is leading the way in the tokenization of real-world assets, with a mission to accelerate the transition to an open economy by building the platforms, assets, and infrastructure that bring financial markets on-chain. With Ondo, institutions get seamless access to tokenized finance, while on-chain users gain access to institutional-grade real-world assets like never before. By bridging traditional finance and the blockchain economy, Ondo is unlocking liquidity, efficiency, and global access, reshaping markets for the digital age. As the leader in institutional adoption, Ondo Finance is the gateway to the trillion-dollar tokenization revolution. Institutional-grade finance, on-chain, for everyone. Bankless Nation, Coinbase is offering Bitcoin collateralized loans on their platform to their users. They are doing so by integrating with Morpho, a trustless, permissionless DeFi application in the background, which invokes one of the oldest and I think most beloved Bankless memes that goes all the way back to 2020. Say it with me. The DeFi Mullet. Today on the show, I have representatives from both organizations on the podcast to talk about this. We have Paul Frambot, the CEO and co-founder of Morpho Labs. Paul, welcome back to Bankless.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me again.
And joining from the Coinbase side, we have Will Robinson, the VP of Engineering at Coinbase. Will, welcome to Bankless for the first time.
Great to be here.
So we have different schedules here on the show today. Will has a 30-minute constraint, and so we're going to front run with some Coinbase Will questions. Paul, of course, welcome to join in at any time. And then we'll get to some more Morpho-specific questions in the second half of this. So Will, I'm hoping you can just kind of start things off with this conversation. Ryan and I have just, hypothesized about the inevitability of the DeFi mullet. Coinbase integrating with a DeFi protocol to offer a service to its customers is so exactly precisely what the DeFi mullet is that it gets me really, really excited. So maybe just start this conversation off for us. Why do this? How does it work? What's in it for Coinbase? Where does this go next?
So excited to talk about this today. And I'm going to start with what's in it for our users, right? We've got a lot of users on Coinbase that are holding a lot of Bitcoin in particular on the platform. And that's what we've started with here. This is a way for you to come to the main Coinbase application, look at your Bitcoin and say, I'd like to take a loan out against that Bitcoin. And right there within the application with just a couple button presses, you can collateralize some of your Bitcoin and draw down a loan in USDC. Behind the scenes, we are providing access to the Morpho protocol that we partner with, a DeFi protocol that sits on Base. We take that Bitcoin from your Coinbase custodial account and all in one fancy transaction, we wrap that in CBBTC, put that into Morpho as collateral, draw down a USDC loan, and put that USDC right back in your Coinbase account that you're already familiar with, and you can go about your day, buy your Lambo, whatever it is.
We've noticed Coinbase becoming increasingly on-chain. Jesse has really, rammed the on-chain word into people's heads over the last few years. At what point did Coinbase decide that this product was ready to go and Coinbase could just integrate with DeFi directly? What were some of the deciding factors that made this the right time, the right moment for this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And a lot of things really had to come together. I think that's one of the reasons they had an engineer come talk to you instead of a product manager, because there were actually a lot of enabling technologies that all had to come together to make this happen. Trusted protocols like Morpho that have formal verification, that have a lot of audits, that have Lindy and some track record on chain. Base itself, I think, was a big component that had to come together. And then smart wallet technology, EIP 4337, these things that enable us to do all of this stuff, even spending from your custodial Coinbase balance, all in one wrapper transaction. Like, these enabling technologies just weren't there even 6-12 months ago. So this really is the right time.
Can you pop open the hood for me and so we can take a peek at what this looks like? Are there individual Morpho positions per loan, per user? Or is it just kind of aggregated and lumped together? What does it actually look like on the back end?
Great question. Love to be on Bankless for this. So yes, it is an individual position per user. Behind the scenes, what we're doing is we're actually provisioning a wallet that is keyed off of a passkey, if you want to get down into these details, for that specific individual Coinbase user. That wallet then owns the Morpho position that holds this BTC collateral or CBBTC collateral, and that draws down the USDC loan. The USDC actually doesn't sit on that wallet. All in one transaction, it's funneled back into your Coinbase custodial account is how we've currently implemented it. But there is a wallet per user that uses this feature on chain.
If I may, this is what makes the integration absolutely unique, right? Like, we've seen before, like some other platforms aggregating deposits, once in a day and deposits in the lending protocol. However, spinning off seamlessly like a wallet for every single user without the users even knowing that they're interacting with the blockchain, without knowing the concept of gas, private keys, etc. That's the very first time that it happens at such a scale.
So say I pull out a loan, a $100,000 loan, and I need to repay that loan to get my Bitcoin back. What is the limiting factor that prevents me from just pulling out Bitcoin? That's Morpho, right? So it's not Coinbase that is actually the reason why you cannot pull out the Bitcoin. It's because there's literally a loan. Morpho is the gate, not Coinbase, correct?
That's correct. So Coinbase in this feature is providing access to Morpho as a DeFi protocol. And Morpho, its logic is encoded on chain in an immutable smart contract that says you can draw back this much of your collateral, but if you draw back more than this much, then you'd be in a liquidation zone. And so the smart contracts simply won't let you do that. So the way it works from the end user perspective, you come to the Coinbase app, and we've got an affordance, just like we've got a simple button to take out a loan, we've got a simple button to say, well, let me repay part or all of that loan. And it just runs the process in reverse, takes the USDC out of your Coinbase custodial balance, repays that on chain in the Morpho protocol, and then all in one go, if you specified that you want to pull collateral back, we'll pull some or all of your Bitcoin back. And there's a third button just for completeness saying, I would like to take out a bigger loan. Similar idea.
Does Coinbase just match the loan terms one-to-one that Morpho offers, as in like you can max out the line of credit, or does it like provide extra safeguards, or is it just really just a conduit for a copy and paste of the terms that Morpho is offering?
At the moment, I believe, and I'm not 100% certain on this, but I do believe that we've got some additional safety constraint where in our UI,
you can't just leverage up to the max. Okay.
It's not a leverage product at all for us. This is about getting utility, dollar utility out of your Bitcoin. But I believe that in our UI, we don't let you select an LTV that is right at the edge of what the Morpho smart contract would allow. But that's purely a sort of UI-based limitation. At the end of the day, these are all loans that are happening on chain in Morpho.
I'm curious, is there a contract signed here between Morpho and Coinbase, or was this actually just a completely permissionless integration? Is there a pen and paper legal system contract that was signed, or did Coinbase was like, oh, we could just integrate with Morpho and no one can really stop us?
So I know we had a lot of technical conversations, reviews of security and things like that. They don't bring the engineers in the room to sign the contract, so I can't actually comment definitively. Paul probably knows what we've inked, if we've inked anything, but yeah, I'm not certain on that.
The Morpho protocol in itself is completely permissionless, right? So anyone can come in and integrate and does not require any contract at all. However, there are some specific business terms that goes beyond the integration. There can be a contract for that. And, I can't comment specifically on this, but the integration in itself can be completely permissionless.
Will, do you have any indication about why Morpho was selected and not Aave, for example, or even like Compound? There are other Morpho competitors, alternatives out there. What was the key differentiator that Morpho offered that was really compelling for Coinbase?
Yeah, great question. So we've really appreciated the Morpho approach so far. Although I think there are a lot of really impressive DeFi protocols out there, and I'm interested broadly in all of them. But the thing that made this such a good fit for this first integration and for this particular product is the fact that Morpho is simple in a sense and has isolated markets, and that is exactly the value proposition that we want to offer to our users. We want to say, hey, you want to take a loan out against your Bitcoin. That's a complicated enough concept. That's a scary enough concept, perhaps, for some users. We don't want to also overload you with you're entering a money market and. So I think in the future, as we get more data about how our users are engaging with this, what their joys about it are, what their pain points are, where their confusion lies, I think that'll inform the kinds of integrations that we might want to do in the future. But for this first product, we think it's a really, really critical use case. People are sitting on billions and billions of dollars of Bitcoin, and an overriding desire is to continue holding that Bitcoin. But just like people with assets of all kinds, there's also a sub-desire within that to say, but in the meantime, I've got this cash flow need. I want to remodel my bathroom. Giving people access to that in 5 minutes in their pajamas on a Sunday night without talking to anyone, without getting anything notarized. That is such we forget, living in crypto and living in DeFi as we all do, just how radical that feels to someone who's coming from TradFi, has taken that step into Coinbase, bought some Bitcoin a few years ago, but has never really experienced the magic of what you can do quickly, instantaneously, permissionlessly with DeFi. And so we wanted to give them that taste in as focused a way as we could. And Morpho was, I think, a perfect fit for providing that first product.
I would even add to that, the key differentiator of Morpho for large-scale distribution partners like Coinbase is that the Morpho stack is fully, immutable and is owned by the integrator. Like, the Morpho team, Morpho token holders have zero control over the code that is deployed, over the risk management, et cetera, et cetera. It's not the case of, other lending alternatives where essentially if they want to upgrade the code, if they want to change the risk parameters, well, that's a trust assumption. If you're a large fintech, if you're a large exchange that want to plug into DeFi, right? One of the reasons you want to do DeFi is to be able to own the infrastructure as well as you own the distribution, right? And if you're a fintech right now, or if you're an exchange right now, well, you own a lot the distribution. What's interesting is what if you could also own the infrastructure, right? Especially for fintechs.
Will, so since you're in engineering and you kind of have a lay of the land, is this kind of a sign of things to come for Coinbase? Can we expect Coinbase to kind of continue building DeFi infrastructure into its front end for users? And is there any sort of teasers that you can give us about what's coming next?
Short answer is yes. And no, I can't give you any teasers about what's coming next. But I do think that we are in a world of fairly new enabling technologies that we're really excited to continue pushing on, as I mentioned before. And also, and we might talk more about this later as well, a world of renewed possibilities in terms of just like the vitality and openness to DeFi in America and really around the world. I think it is a different regulatory landscape as well. And that is something that we really welcome. And it's only by feeling that difference gets clarified just how it felt by contrast 6 months, 12 months, 2 years ago.
I think you've hinted at this a bit, but I want to trace over this one more time. So you've already integrated the value of a Morpho vault is now inside of Coinbase with CBBTC loans. But there were some technologies that you mentioned that really enabled that, like passkeys and a few other technologies separate from Morpho, which I would imagine if you guys integrate, a second, third, fourth DeFi app or DeFi product and service in the front end, you would be reusing those technologies. And that feels like a tech tree unlock for crypto. Maybe you could kind of, once again, just trace over what those technologies are, what they do and what they unlock and how you might be repurposing them for future DeFi integrations in the future.
Yeah, great question. And tech tree is exactly the right analogy. So love that. I'll try to be brief. I think smart contract wallets that enable us to compose more actions together atomically on behalf of the user, that's a big unlock. Passkeys, which can serve as a cryptographic root of trust for the end user and a sort of root of their self-custody, actually, is a big unlock that didn't exist in a widespread way just a few years ago. Cheap, fast L2s like Base, big unlock as well. You want to check a passkey signature on chain within a transaction. That's a pretty expensive proposition on Ethereum L1, for example. So that's a very big unlock as well. And then protocols like Morpho that just have that Lindy, have that formal verification, have those audits, and have the characteristics we are looking for that compose well with the kinds of products we're trying to build, exactly as Paul said before. So all those things together, I think, are a very powerful package. And then when I think internally about sort of Coinbase's tech tree, right, there's another side of this, which is the integration with all of our existing more custodial products that people know, that they love, that they're used to, with an interface that they're very comfortable with. And that sounds to an engineer at first glance like maybe a small detail or just kind of the last mile glue, but actually bridging between that more custodial or Web 2E universe and this Web3 or DeFi universe, on-chain universe, I should say, in a way that really feels seamless and is legit, like has that user-owned root of trust and so forth, without any ugly seams, without any warts on it. That's very, very, very hard. We've invested a lot at Coinbase to do it. And with that foundation laid, I'm really excited about the other applications we could build on top.
Now, I know you're in engineering, so you might not have the perfect context to answer this question, but I'll see what we can do here. What can you say about consumer demand or expected estimated consumer demand for this product? How much TVL do you think Coinbase could really be putting in Morpho and on its own chain too, on Base as well, with this product? Do you have any sort of indication here?
It's still early days and we're gradually rolling this product out, but I would say so far it has definitely exceeded our expectations in terms of like the total volume of loans that have been taken out, the total volume of collateral that has been put into Morpho. So all signs are very positive. It is so early, and to see people sort of in those first few days of, well, what is this thing? Let me experiment with it. Frankly, it's kind of hard to find in the product right now, even if it is rolled out to you. And so early indications from my point of view are we see people kind of running through friction and brick walls that shouldn't even be there just to get their hands on this thing and try it out. So I think the future is pretty bright. We have several $1 billion of Bitcoin custodied on our Coinbase platform today. I'm not here to prognosticate about the percentage of that can ultimately go on chain and find utility in this way. But I think we think it's pretty high.
And Paul, the integration with Coinbase here is on the base deployment of Morpho. What can you tell us about the difference in like user appetites, whether it's the Ethereum mainnet version of Morpho or the base version of Morpho? And what do you see on your side of the incoming TVL from Coinbase?
I share similar perspective to Will on like, I was not expecting like such an appetite like early on with just a tiny rollout of the app across like very few users. And, everybody that I know that has a Coinbase account, like, DM me saying, hey, I can't access it yet. Like, when will I be able to like, borrow with my Bitcoin as collateral? And not only the rollout is limited, but also the size of the loan is still limited for now as we, gather early feedback, etc. Overall, extremely bullish on this integration. I think we can take it, very far. And, overall, that makes me even more bullish for the base instance of the Morpho deployment. Just because, I think of DeFi protocols as global order books, right? Where not only do you share code and, the code is of the infrastructure is commoditized and open source, but now you also share state, right? And so in the other end of the spectrum, on the lending side, we have many different venues that are providing liquidity and generating yields directly from borrowers interacting in the Coinbase app. And this is where things gets exciting, right? Because now tomorrow, maybe, a Morpho USDC vault gets integrated into another application that is not Coinbase, that is maybe like a fintech or even another exchange. And yet they share liquidity with one another thanks to Base. And that leads to more efficient pricing, more efficient collateralization ratios, deeper liquidity, which can, match bigger demand, et cetera, et cetera. All the while providing to the user a level of transparency that, has also been unmatched. And this is something we've been not, underlining enough in this integration, is that users can have a sense for every single penny, like where they're deposited, and can have the trust of like the funds are not being rehypothecated in a weird way. The same way we've seen with other exchanges like 2 years ago, thinking obviously of FTX, and that was like rehypothecating the funds in like, other firms.
Huge plus one, instant, global, permissionless liquidity, fully auditable up to the second, right there on chain, is a modern miracle. It's the reason I got into this industry in the first place in some sense. And so excited to be part of that story. One last thing just on the demand signal. By far, our most common support call on this product so far is, I don't see it yet. When do I get it? So that is a great position to be in, that people are clamoring for us to speed the rollup out.
Paul, maybe you can just kind of double tap on the whole can't be evil thing. You didn't say the words can't be evil, but that's really what I heard. And like we were talking about earlier, this could have been a product where Coinbase just lumped everything together into one Coinbase position on Morpho. And that would have been something, but like it wouldn't have been as cool. And there's a big line that gets crossed when there's individual user accounts that have individual Morpho positions that really leverages kind of the nature and strengths and ethos of DeFi. Paul, just like trace over that conversation just once more.
100%. Like the bulked like account where you have like an exchange that offers a yield product or a lending product, and they offer the loans instantly through their own like assets under custody, and then maybe once a week through their Fireblocks account they're gonna have a bundled position inside Morpho that aggregates the position of all the users. This we've seen over the last 2 years, right? It's not really new. It's like essentially using DeFi as another counterparty, but not directly as your own infrastructure, right? And so the key difference here is that as a large-scale distribution partner like Coinbase, you actually own entirely the infrastructure, and every single user is owner of their position, and they have very clear on-chain guarantees provided by the 600 lines of code of Morpho that are completely immutable, that are essentially a margin engine, right? And so if you're a user of the Coinbase application that is using this loan product, well, you have these 600 lines of code of Morpho guarantees that essentially tells you that, okay, past this threshold, you'll be liquidated before you won't be liquidated, and you can take, the USDC that you want and need. And this will stay forever true, whether, I'm happy with that, whether Will is happy with that. Like, we can't take this away from the user, right? And no one can. I found is the most exciting is that for the very first time, we have large scale access to this specific benefit of blockchain. And by the way, I think this will inspire many other integrations, not only within like the Coinbase app for other products, but also I think Coinbase will inspire a ton of other companies to do similar things, right? And maybe, reusing some of the same account abstraction technologies or like, just similar concepts. And, I really don't see how just finance in general is not going to be, entirely inspired by this, right? Because as soon as everybody starts doing this, we start sharing liquidity with one another. We start having these global books that are being used, and just the efficiency of the overall system is being multiplied by, multiple orders of magnitude, I believe.
It's a small change. It's a nuanced change. The idea of having like just one bundled Coinbase position getting yield from Morpho and passing that yield back onto its users versus users having individual Morpho accounts. But it's actually a huge change because the idea that individual users have their own direct accounts with Morpho, whether they know it or not, is the difference between Coinbase being a bank versus not. Whereas if Coinbase was using, a variety of tools to get yield and they were only passing back some of the yield to their user, well, that's what a bank does. It takes in deposits, it goes and gets yield, it takes a chunk of that yield, and then it gives its depositors, its creditors, its customers less amount of that yield. Whereas the difference of what's happening here is it's actually just all Coinbase is doing is being a conduit for a Morpho integration, which, like you said, is not adding any new counterparties. There's still the same number of counterparties. There's just now also these lines of code, this 600 lines of code that cannot be evil. And so it's while it's a subtle change, it's just so meaningfully different as it relates to the customer.
You fulfill the promise of Web3, which is ownership, right? We reach feature parity thanks to all the techs that, Willa has been outlining. We reach feature parity with a Web2 product, like a traditional finance product. And then we plug into this Web3 stack. And this tiny difference is what makes the user fully in control of their own position, right? And ownership is like, with it comes all the promise and benefits of Web3.
I will also just say that any engineer that looks at these 600 lines of code and really takes the time to understand all of the people and process and time that is subbing in for is awestruck. If they're not impressed, then they haven't actually understood. It is a whole new day.
Okay, so that actually brings me to some Morpho-specific questions. And this is the one where we're actually going to start to talk about Coinbase's competitors here, because part of the DeFi Mullet thesis is the idea that, Morpho it's not obligated to just work with Coinbase. Like other centralized financial institutions could just follow Coinbase's lead and look at the 600 lines of code that Will said he's very impressed by, and then, kind of do that same thing. So Paul, has interest in Morpho's infrastructure, changed since the announcement of Coinbase's Bitcoin-backed loans?
I can't comment specifically on names or stuff, but obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I think this integration is going to pave the way for a lot of people to be inspired by this, product. I believe in a similar way that Optimism and Base inspired a lot of other exchanges to, build their own layer 2s, or like a fintechs and other actors to build their own layer 2s. And for us, the play is actually, very similar to Optimism. We work with Coinbase. We've read this amazing product that is like a flagship product that's going to inspire many others. And then, all the other players, obviously, they look at the Morpho stack and its capabilities and they plug into the same instance, and, all the network effect aggregate. And this is where Morpho creates value beyond its, code, which is open source and in itself is not really valuable. Like we don't take any money from the code. The idea is that we sort of are kind of replicating the same playbook as Optimism. So yes, short answer is actually many different players are looking to do similar things on Coinbase.
And we don't mind if you date around some, Paul. David, thank you so much for having me. Really, really appreciate it. I do have to drop. This has been great. Thank you.
Celo is transitioning from a mobile-first, EVM-compatible Layer 1 blockchain to a high-performance Ethereum Layer 2, built on OP Stack with EigenDA and one-block finality. All happening soon with a hard fork. With over 600 million total transactions, 12 million weekly transactions, and 750,000 daily active users, Celo's meteoric rise would place it among one of the top Layer 2s, built for the real world and optimized for fast, low-cost global payments. As the home of the stablecoins, Celo hosts 13 native stablecoins across 7 different currencies, including native USDT on Opera MiniPay, and with over 4 million users in Africa alone. In November, stablecoin volumes hit $6.8 billion, made for seamless on-chain FX trading. Plus, users can pay gas with ERC20 tokens like USDT and USDC and send crypto to phone numbers in seconds. But why should you care about Celo's transition to a Layer 2? Layer 2s unify Ethereum. L1s fragment it By becoming a layer 2, Celo leads the way for other EVM-compatible layer 1s to follow. Follow Celo on X and witness the great Celo happening, where Celo cuts its inflation in half as it enters its layer 2 era and continuing its environmental leadership. The Arbitrum portal is your one-stop hub to entering the Ethereum ecosystem. With over 800 apps, Arbitrum offers something for everyone. Dive into the epicenter of DeFi, where advanced trading, lending, and staking platforms are redefining how we interact with money. Explore Arbitrum's rapidly growing gaming hub, from immersed role-playing games, fast-paced fantasy MMOs, to casual luck battle mobile games. Move assets effortlessly between chains and access the ecosystem with ease via Arbitrum's expansive network of bridges and on-ramps. Step into Arbitrum's flourishing NFT and creator space, where artists, collectors, and social converge, and support your favorite streamers all on-chain. Find new and trending apps and learn how to earn rewards across the Arbitrum ecosystem with limited time campaigns from your favorite projects. Empower your future with Arbitrum. Visit portal.arbitrum.io to find out what's next on your Web3 journey. Paul, I just have a few more questions for you. How has this changed priorities internal to Morpho? Have you had to hire out in different directions, or just refocus the team in any particular way? How has priority shifted?
The good thing about Morpho is that everything is open, and every integrator that we support, we can make the support that we've done, whether it's through lines of code or guides, etc. We can make it open source in our documentation. So I see our support team is sort of compounding its efforts over time thanks to the power of open source. So if we help one team integrate, whether it is Coinbase, whether it is anyone else, well, we can just open source whatever scripts that we use or to essentially help them, and then it can be reused by other integrators, which is also going to be a very important factor into how the decentralized financial infrastructure will take over traditional financial infrastructure. The main difference is that in TradFi, everything is closed source, right? So if you want to build a margin engine, an integration with an API or something, you have to hire 100 devs to do it, right? Whereas in the DeFi world, everything is open, right? So it's the cost of integration reduces over time, and pretty fast actually. And so And by the way, Coinbase also open source their on-chain kits and their account abstraction, tooling. So it's very easy to use and integrate. And so what I believe is that, in a few years from now, any fintech, any financial app that has a bit of distribution it will be so much easier for them to plug into a stateful, easy to access, DeFi network, as opposed to traditional financial rails.
So this is starting off with CBBTC loans. But there's plenty of other assets out there, and there's also plenty of other people to integrate. Where do you think this goes from here? What assets might come next to Coinbase, or even any other financial providers? What are you guys optimizing for next in your product development?
I can't speak specifically about Coinbase roadmap. It's been public that they want to integrate more assets. They want to do more things with Morpho. Morpho in its current state is permissionless and allows for a wide variety of collateral. We've also have our own internal roadmap that we want to ship that will enable even more features and more things around loans that could potentially be integrated by Coinbase and other partners. I think what Coinbase has shipped is really the most MVP version that you could figure, right? There is a lot more you can build around to protect users, to improve their capabilities, the collateral that they can use, the rates, etc. So there's really, really a lot more that can be done. I'd say this is just the minimal first step that could be taken in order to prove the world, well, you can actually build an app with hundreds of millions of customers and have DeFi behind the scenes with the full power, no shortcuts, actual users owning their positions. And this is possible. And now from there, we're going to build some things that are much more ambitious.
So Paul, I'm guessing the average listener of this podcast, this product actually probably isn't for them. I think they probably are like me, and they are going to Morpho directly. They don't need Coinbase. They like to pop open the hood and connect the wires themselves. This is probably going to be for their friends and family. They can tell their friends they can go finally do the DeFi things that they've been doing for years, because now it's just easy in the Coinbase app. So let's talk to our listeners here, which are the people that are probably direct consumers of applications like yours. What else are you building at Morpho for them?
When we introduced a new version of the protocol a year ago, what really we wanted to change about DeFi is positioning DeFi protocols as infrastructure as opposed to like actual products in themselves, right? So you can think of Morpho as a stack for on-chain loans, right? It's permissionless, it's completely decentralized, immutable, and anyone can deploy their own lending and borrowing use cases. And so those use cases are operated by experts, right? Whether they are DAOs, entities, private companies, a group of people, whatever, it's permissionless. And so on the Morpho protocol, you have a myriad of like players, you could think of like Gauntlet, Maker, Sky, Stakehouse, Block Analytica, RE7. We have like 20, 30 maybe now that are, maybe running vaults on the Morpho stack. So you earn yield on specific, assets. There's a wide range of assets that are available on Morpho that, you can earn yield on. And not only can you earn yield on top, but you can also configure the risk profile. So if you want something that's really the safest yield product you've ever seen in DeFi, exposing you to less than 1,000 lines of code and 2 free collateral, well, this is possible. If you want something that's much more risky, that's also possible. Morpho covers the entire, panel of risk reward profiles that you want. And there is like competition between the operators of those vaults, which, drives the fees down, and you end up with, much better rates than in other venues. And so that's the current state, right? Now, the Morpho stack in itself is not completely perfect, right? There are a lot of things that we believe should be done in order to, take it to the next level. Now is not the time for me to discuss specifically about or those things, but I would just say that, the good thing about having an immutable protocol is that once you ship it, like we did 9 months ago, well, you're on to the next thing already. Morpho Association team is 45 contributors now, all hands on how we can improve lending infrastructure on chain.
Paul, this has been very short, but very sweet of a podcast episode. Any kind of open-ended, what else are you excited about in crypto as it relates to Morpho, as it doesn't relate to Morpho? Just kind of open-ended. Let me hear what's going on in your brain.
Getting more and more excited about is finally interoperability coming together. I see some solutions like ACK layer and egg layer and pessimistic proof, coming to life. I also see optimism of this stack, roadmap, finally becoming more concrete. I also see, Espresso and, others like shared sequencing, technologies. In general, it's been tough for the Ethereum community to rally around something. It's been very fragmented over the last few months. I will say, though, that I'm very confident in the direction. I wouldn't change a single thing about the direction that Ethereum has taken, meaning the most censorship resistant and the most decentralized base layer, on top of which we have a wide variety of layers that will interoperate with one another. I don't think there is any other way, personally, as my personal opinion. And I think those impose extremely big technical challenges to have those layers interoperating with one another. But I think we're finally getting there. I'm very excited about this because I can see every single project taking cross-chain much more seriously. We are taking cross-chain, much more seriously. And I believe the fragmentation, it's starting to go away quite concretely in the next 3 to 6 months. I'd say 6 months to be, more realistic. And this is what I'm the most excited about right now.
How has the fragmentation of Ethereum impacted your decision-making and growth, or really anything at Morpho?
As a DeFi protocol, it's actually, you can feel Ethereum fragmentation pretty clearly, right? Because I have every day on my Telegram, tens of chains, hammering me to deploy Morpho or whatever. Every time Morpho is deployed on a new chain, the state is fragmented, right? Liquidity is fragmented. Caveat is that you have more and more arbitrageurs, people providing liquidity in more clever ways and, from block to block, reallocating. But still, for us, the tough thing has been, okay, how do we focus, right? We have just Ethereum. Should we deploy on another chain to get the gas efficiency? Okay, Base seems compelling, so let's do that. But then once you have a layer 2 and Ethereum, where should you go? Should you go on, there is just a bunch of options.
Because especially with Morpho, adding new deployments of Morpho needs to be done very cautiously, because then you're fragmenting deposits and fragmenting liquidity.
Morpho does not have any management component, so we're not the worst in this position where it's not as if if we deployed in a new chain, we have to manage the new chain, etc. So we have less of those operational constraints. I'd say it's more of a focus thing where internally we like to be extremely laser focused on a few things. And if we deploy on many chain, it's hard to keep up with the focus, right? And so what we've decided more recently is that we would deploy Morpho pretty much everywhere. There is an EVM like compatibility with the Morpho protocol, and then we would let builders build, right? So the Morpho support teams or engineering teams, front end, growth, etc. We would not take care of those instances. However, we could fund through grants, like partners that want to build on Morpho, or we can help send them documentation, this kind of things, right? And so this is how we're deploying everywhere. But frankly, that's not the ideal state, right? The ideal state is that those instances are able to interoperate with one another in a way that's not too bad. I'm pretty optimistic that we will see this year.
Paul, this has been really great. Congratulations on being probably one of the most large and most clear examples of the DeFi mullet. You got to love it when a meme thesis comes into reality. It's been a pleasure talking to you here, my man.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me again. That was awesome.
Bankless Nation, you guys know the deal. Crypto is risky. DeFi is risky. You can lose what you put in, even apparently if you put it in Coinbase, because now they're putting it in DeFi. But nonetheless, this is what we're here for on the Bankless journey. Thanks for being with us.